Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Wombs with a View. I'm Sylvia,
I'm Jenny.
and we're so excited. I'm so excited, Jenny, that we're launching this. Wombs with a View, we're coming together to share our stories, our insights. As you know, Jenny and I are two friends, we're two moms, we're two doulas and childhood birth educators, and we have lots of stories, lots of juicy stories sometimes, Jenny. So we wanted to launch this to share them with you and also to inspire, educate, and provide options that maybe we didn't have when we had our little ones. And as doulas, we talk about options all the time. And when it comes to birthing and raising our kids. So that's what Wombs with a View is all about. And we want to come to you once a week, every Wednesday at 2 with a different topic and different stories. And we want to hear your stories. So please subscribe to the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, put your comments here because we can see them and would love to address them. So, this is our first topic, and what a topic we've chosen, how motherhood changes us, right, Jenny?
Oh, I felt it so much this week. I have so many stories from students and from clients that just come up again and again. So we're talking today specifically about how birth has such a profound effect and changes on women's lives. And it can be anything from, families ending up moving, changing priorities. The thing that I see so much that I think is common for you, Sylvia, and for myself is career changes. I've seen like
Oh, big
high-powered
time.
lawyers who love their work so much, or surgeons. These people who spend, whose baby is their career for so many years, come off of mat actually never come off of mat leave, just stay on mat leave perpetually,
That's
and
right.
you could never fathom that you would possibly care about a human being more than you care about your career, but it happens all the time.
All the
um
time. We see
yeah.
that in our classes so often. How many times a woman at 36 weeks is packing boxes because they're moving? I'm guilty. I did that. I had two little ones, and we felt we needed a bigger home,
Mhm. And
right?
that was the time, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like Sylvia was saying a moment ago, for us, a big part of this is to be able to create community and to share with you. So while we're the ones talking, although we will have guests come in from time to time, while we're the ones talking, we will invite you from time to come in here and leave some comments so that we can see. And the question that we wanted to put to you is, if you who are watching, whether you're watching live now or whether you watch the replay, just some ideas of what has happened to you in these transition times, if perhaps you're pregnant, kind of what you see moving forward. And if you have been through and are now in the postpartum period, either, months or days or years after giving birth, we're really curious to see what some of your changes have been.
Oh yeah. Oh no, yes. Tell us your stories. Tell us your stories. We want to know. And we thought what a great idea of introducing ourselves through our stories and how it changed us, right? Because we talk about that often.
Yeah,
How
I know for
you
you, I mean, you have more than one child. And I think in what we're talking about, that probably means at least three transitions.
Oh, definitely. And I think the first one when I had my kids are now 12, 10, and 8, boy and two girls. And I think the first one, I think a lot of people can say that the first one is life altering. I mean, really, it profoundly changed me as a person, as a woman. Things, where would that be? I remember calling my mom when I had the baby in my arms and just telling her, "Mom, I'm a mom now," and just how, in tears, and she was in tears, and it was a rite of passage that I was really looking forward to, and it happened. Other ways that it changes me, how changed us, changes your couple having a baby. You're going from two people to three, and you're going from two people, young people with no children. I remember going out at all times of the night, not worrying, not caring, having parties, staying up really late because we could. And then all of a sudden having a newborn where you're lack of sleep. So for me, the lack of sleep really changed that first year of my life, which I had never experienced before. As a couple, it changes your family values. You might not have thought of what are our
Mm,
family
mm,
values, but then when you have other family members come in, I remember having those talks. Well, what do you and you and me and you as a family, JP, my husband, what do we believe in? What do we stand for as a family, and how will we live our lives? In our prenatal classes, Jenny and I both teach for Rock the Cradle, my doula agency, and a lot of people are saying, Sylvia, what products should I be even using now? So that I know in my house, going from perhaps buying anything on the shelf to, oh my gosh, what could I put on my baby's skin? I
mm,
heard that was profound changes there, and in how we eat. When you start feeding your baby, you go through all of these, lots of changes in that first year for me, in any case. The career change, and I know you're going to talk about that as well because you also changed careers. And like you said, I mean, I did have that big job. I had that big job in a university, and I was, let's say, my job was abolished. So all of a sudden, when I was pregnant with my third child, I had some decisions to make. Do I continue and keep in my zone of comfort, or do I change? And by that time, with three babies, I knew I couldn't, like those lawyers and doctors you were talking about, I
mm,
couldn't fathom going back to working. I was working in events, couldn't go back to working nights and weekends, and just, I do have a family now. So priorities for me changed. And that's when I became a doula. After my third, and I'd been wanting to have more impact. And after every birth, I had doulas and doula support, and that little seed had been planted. I always talk
mm,
about that. And that's when I made the change after my daughter was born, the third one, and I completely did a 180. Now, having a doula, you might say, oh gosh, well, now you're working all hours of the night, and you're running your own business. You're probably working more hours, and that's true. But I think I was working for myself. It's very
mm,
different than working for someone else. But that has had, that changed my life completely. And that's from having kids. I never would have known what a doula was before having children, right? Some people do. In my case, I didn't. So, what does if you're looking at career changes, what jobs are you interested in? What hours are you able to work? This pandemic, Jenny, there are lots of companies who have been very forthcoming in changing people's schedules, but others I've seen have not. So we have mothers trying to be, and parents at home, working full time and homeschooling, and it can be very stressful. And I think that's where the lots of changes come about. I think there'll be a
mm,
lot of changes after this.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, I know you changed careers as well throughout,
You know
after
what? When
motherhood.
it was something that I hadn't thought of until, and I don't know if you even know this. I don't know if I even want to say it. Until you were talking about the healthy eating, etc. I know I definitely made a switch, but I stopped smoking when I became pregnant.
Oh, I
Did you know I was like an actual
you were a
habitual smoker?
smoker.
I don't know if I've ever said that to many people, certainly not on a live, because
Well, we
I'm
don't think as a yogi,
right. And I would go to my hot yoga class and light a cigarette up when I left the studio. And I'm not judgmental of people who are doing that, but when I look back, it was a huge change that I made in my life. And so that was with the first pregnancy for sure. And I think my second time around, unlike what you're saying, the first one seemed a little bit more
yeah.
profound for you. For me, it was the second one.
Mm,
So my son was born 2.5 years later. And as I'm sure will come up again and again on this show, is I experienced a postpartum depression with him. I was diagnosed with postpartum depression a few months into Arlo's life. And for one reason or another, I decided that I did not want to go back to my work as a journalist. And
right.
even though it was quite flexible, as we're talking about, the flexibility was important. I was working at La Pige, I was working at home. Um, but I ended up taking my yoga teacher training. What happened was I had actually gone on medication for the depression, and then I threw myself into this new thing that I was no longer feeling lost. I was feeling super motivated and passionate, and I started taking trainings first to teach children yoga, and then by the time that quite short kids yoga teacher training, I had weaned off the medication. I was like, all right, here we go. So it was huge. He's 7 now, and I've basically been, aside from the doula work, I've been teaching yoga full time. And that was a massive change, because, as we'll talk, and as people know, in teaching yoga as a career, you're not just kind of going to your one weekly class. It is hopefully a lifestyle, and probably not necessarily smoking a couple packs of cigarettes a day.
Right. And it goes back to that health, am I being healthy? What I like to always think about, and at one point, I think I joined you there, is I was not leading a healthy lifestyle. And it was when my daughter said to me, "Oh yeah, it's daddies who exercise. Mummies don't exercise." And I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" "Yeah, daddies are stronger." And I'm like, "Oh, let me show." And that was really a trigger for me in change,
Will
right?
you put up a photo of your husband's six-pack?
I don't think he'll want me to. Where
Sorry.
is it? Where is it? So yeah, lots of changes, and now look at you now. Yeah, your whole. I mean, we both. I mean, I was in management for many years, and you're a journalist, and now we're both working in helping moms and parents, helping new parents, journey from pregnancy to new parenthood.
Yeah, it's a transformation. It's a 100% transformation.
Yeah, we've got Sarah here who says, yeah, transitioning from one child to two can also be very stressful. And that for some people it is, and they feel the guilt. They feel guilt about, will I love my second child as much as my first?
Oh, I thought it was just me who thought that. I remember being so stressed out, because I loved and still love my daughter with, you feel like it's your whole heart. And my son was born only 24 months later. And I had this mom, and she was still a baby. She was still nursing. She was still in diapers. And I kind of panicked, like, oh my God, we've done this too soon. I'm not ready. How can I possibly love? I have no more space. And it was a moment when I realized that when you have a second, or I imagine third kid, this was my big download, was you don't divide the pie. Your heart actually grows and just makes more room for the other person that's joining the family.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Lovely. And my kids are always like, "Mommy, who do you love more? Who do you love more?" And I'm like, "I don't love anybody more. I love all of you." And it's hard to realize that when you're pregnant, and how, with the second, how is that even possible? Because we feel like we're going to burst. But we just burst even more, right?
Yeah, you make more and
As
more
every
space.
child. Well, you look at these families. I look at these Instagram families. My gosh, they're having 8, 9, 10 children. Some of them, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
they find the love there. There's love there
Mm-hmm.
for sure, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. So changes. Let us know. I mean, what kind of changes? I know for me, I mentioned it before, the house, the moving, the nesting. We're nesting. We're creating this new life for baby is was important. And I realize now that I probably didn't need to move. Probably I know I didn't need
Is
to
it the
move,
house
but
that you live in now?
it is the house that I live in now, and I'm very happy that we have it. But what's stress? I think we create a lot of stress in our lives sometimes when
Mm-hmm.
we're. I searched up, Jenny. I googled, how does motherhood change us, and we didn't mention any of what the 100 first posts were, and it was how our brains change, how a mother in pregnancy, her brain changes after she begin, and I don't have the science. I'm not going to go into that. That's a whole other show. But that is, when we talk about mommy brain, I felt my brain was a mush in the in the first, year with sleeplessness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think my brain's still a slight mush.
I
No,
think
I'm
so.
good.
When you thought your brain, I think my brain too. My brain definitely, definitely. So you said something, and I see this online all the time. I want to get back, on the mummy groups. I want to get back into my pre-baby jeans. I need a boob job because my boobs have changed. I need a whatever. I need this and this, and I'm so sad. I can't get. I'm not the way I was before. We
Mm.
hear that a lot, don't we?
Yeah, a surprising amount. And again, as I was saying, teaching prenatal and postnatal, I see it directly, especially when you're talking about the physical changes. I had one student the other night. I don't know if she'll watch this. She knows I was going to tell this story, though, because it was so exactly what was on my mind, because I knew this show was coming up. And she's a cyclist. I won't say her name. You know her. She's a cyclist, and recently she was having pains, like almost even contractions, and she had to slow down. And it was a sign to her of how things are changing, even though she didn't necessarily want them to be changing. She was pushing too hard. She was doing so much. So that can be really, really hard to accept. And I said, I mean, this, whether I told her and the rest of the pregnant yoga class, the prenatal yoga class, something that I could see make people uncomfortable, and maybe pregnant people who are watching right now won't be happy to hear this, but you do change. We all change, and you can never be the same after birth as you were before. It's impossible. The baby is born, and you are also born as a new person. So the boobs won't be the same. The body won't be the same. They won't. Oh my, they won't. But but the thing that I realized in myself, and I also share with my students, is I'm in better physical and mental health after my 2 kids than I ever was before. So the changing doesn't have to be changing for the worse by any way, shape, or form. It's a transition, and it is that birth of a new person, and can very, very often, and I wish for anybody watching, be a positive change.
Oh, I agree. I agree. It is for the better. I think, however, we're so anxious, and I don't think we think about those changes either. We just think we'll get back into our pre-body shapes as women.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part we don't, you know. You may lose the weight, but it just might, your body just is different. My rib cage opened up a little bit. My
Mm-hmm.
t-shirts don't fit. You know, I had to change wardrobe, and but there is an adaptation. You know, the postpartum period, they say, is 6 weeks. It's much longer than that. You know, I say it takes 9 months to make a baby. It's going to take 9 months and more to get back to a place where you know, it can, where we're a place where we're feeling good again, and that better self. You
It's
know,
funny, like last year or something like this. I know you've had her as a guest on one of your shows. Oh, I can't hear you. I don't know if.
uh-oh.
Oh no, it's good. Julie Kuzmario, who has an
Mm,
amazing podcast. She's had a couple of them now. Voices that create change, I think, is the one she's working on now. But she had this podcast about motherhood, and she had me on it a year or so ago. And the question was about the postpartum period and when does it end? And the conclusion that myself and Julie and the other guest on the show, we said that it doesn't. Postpartum is the rest of your life, because you have the baby and then it's the postpart. So whether it's 40 days or 6 months, I think it's a transition. You can't go back. You are forever a mother.
I like Sabrina here, who says, my boobs did come back after about 1.5 years of stopping breastfeeding. There's hope for you still. Yeah, I know some women who've
Oh,
had
you dear.
bigger breasts, bigger boobs
Again, it just
after.
changes.
It's just different. It's just different, right? That's funny, Sabrina. Well, that's good. That's good. There is hope. And it just depends what we want. I find as I get older, all those, you know, it just, your priorities change, right? But I think it
Mhm.
just takes time. It takes time
Mhm.
to move into that place of acceptance also,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
what we want to impart with our children, right? You know, especially I find when we have daughters. I think I
Mm.
do think a little bit, you know, wanting to show my daughters about womanhood and strong women, and which I didn't necessarily do. Strong man, of course, with my son, but we're talking about different things. We talk
Mhm.
about different things. Well, this is so we could talk about this forever, Jenny. Motherhood, such an important. Are there any moms to be listening to us? Let us know. Give you a high five, because lots of changes for you coming, and I think
We're
is
hoping we don't scare people.
no. That's not the point, I think, but to be cognizant rather than going into it just blindly, because I think it's when we go into it blindly that we're upset after. We're upset, you know, and I think all of us as moms listening here, we have you know, part of our, I don't want to say a job, but you know, with our friends, is to guide them through that, to
Mm.
accept them, to tell them they're beautiful and gorgeous, and yes, they're becoming better. They're becoming
Do you know
better.
one thing I is just remembering now? Once upon a time, I wrote a blog post called "How Motherhood Softens Us," and again, I don't know if that's what people want to hear, and it's not everybody's experience. But I know for myself, I always felt quite rigid and never super in any kind of femininity, really kind of this very yang kind of lifestyle, again, journalism and all this stuff. I felt, hormonal shifts, all this stuff, but motherhood has totally softened me. I don't think in a negative way, again, by any way, shape, or form. I think that with the heart opening first kid, second kid, you get just like a little puddle on the ground right now, sometimes in a really good way.
Well, there's a whole movement, and I think you working in yoga probably see this, is that the rise of the femininity, right? I mean, we have been living in a very male dominated world, and our workplaces are very male dominated for the most part. And I don't want to generalize, but we see this in many, lots on social media, the rise of the feminine, and where it's okay. It's good to have, feminine and some masculine traits. It's good. Now, if you're listening and you're a mom to be, we don't want you to be afraid, but thinking about the future for sure got me thinking, what type of questions can you be asking yourself even before you have, as you go into becoming a mother? And I wanted to leave you with a few takeaways, questions that came up. How do you imagine life with a baby? What are the expectations that you're putting on yourself? We have high expectations. Moms have really high expectations after giving birth and going forward. So, where can we lower those expectations? Who can we ask for help in those first weeks and months and years? It takes a village, as we say, right? What expectations do you have of your partner? In our classes, we talk a lot about that as well, because it's communication between the partners. Going from 2 to 3 can create some chaos in a relationship. So I want you to start thinking about that. And in your place of work, do you work that in a place that is family friendly? Or will you think, down the road you will have to change? What does that change look like? What have you always wanted to do? Where are your passions? The business coach in me is coming up. But do you have any other questions that pop up, Jenny?
It's so funny, because when you said expectations, I kind of have had in my head in the last while this wish to live without expectations.
Right?
So, not to contradict what you said, but there will
No.
be some of this in the show, because that's the point. We have different points of view, but I do think there is something to be said too about going into things with a fresh, clean slate and knowing it'll be different, but not always not having the expectation that it will be this or that, good or bad, just different.
Yeah, and that's what I meant. Like, what if you have really high expectations? It's going to look
Mm-hmm.
like this, and I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
this and this and this. Well,
Life will
gosh,
kick your ass. That's what happens, and a
this
lot of
is,
moms that we see in
yeah,
pregnancy, it's
yeah.
exactly that. I had one student one time who owned a restaurant, and she was the head chef, and this was her baby, and she was not taking a mat leave, and she was going to just work because it was her job. Baby was going to be born, pop right out, and she'd be back on her feet with a nanny. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Again, like it's her life, it's her thing. And she ended up laid out on bed rest, and she ended up having a cesarean that she didn't heal well from. And it was just like this other student I was saying who was having the early contractions, is if you're not going to accept these changes. There's another example. I was the end of that sentence is the universe is just going to make you deal with it. Another thing that was very, very marked, Dina, I won't see your last name, but Dina, there was one woman who was very, very strong, had a great yoga practice, and she was in my prenatal class. And sometimes we were doing like plank. If you could do plank without putting our knees on the ground, though the majority of pregnant women will, because it just makes more sense. But Dina was going to stay in her proper plank. And the moment she had to put her knees on the ground for her supported plank with her knees, she had this click of like, okay, I am changing, and there's nothing that I can do about it. This is what it is. And she let go. She surrendered to the change.
Love it. So beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, and Alice here. Lovely Alice. Thank you for joining. Where is her comment here? I'd put it up. Yeah, idealizing. We idealize the postpartum and how there's a romantic side to it, right? You know, we think we got our new
Mm.
baby and gosh, so yeah, that was I did that too, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And I think it comes back to those what were we expecting, and just know that, you know, maybe we need to change change our expectations along the way.
Mm. Mm.
Well, thank you everybody for coming and joining us on this first show. That's all the time we have. And we look forward to talking every week with you. If you have subjects you'd like us to address, jot them down in the Facebook group or in the comments here. We're preparing a lot of great content for you, and stories and some education. And we want to talk about what you want to hear. So that's it. If you haven't subscribed, if you like this, please like the video. If you haven't subscribed, please like the Facebook page. We're on YouTube as well, if that's where you hang out. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Thank you, Jenny.
Oh, thanks, Sylvia. I'm so happy that we're doing this, and I'm so happy for all the people who have popped in and who will. Yeah, for me, like everything that I do work-wise, the community is the most important thing. It's not the Jenny and Sylvia show. Although
It
we will be here
isn't.
for you, our intention is that everybody is contributing in any way that you can, and we're always so, as Sylvia said, so open to hearing what you want to know about. And if there are people who are out there who would make good guests, whether it's you yourself who wants to pop in, or if you have a recommendation for somebody, because everything is done online, does not have to be a Montreal local. If there's somebody that you find inspiring that you would like for us to bring on the show, please let us know.
Wonderful. All right. See you guys next week, next Wednesday at 2. Bye.
Bye.